G'day, guys, and welcome back to the Supercoach Swordplay channel. You're on with me, Janath. I'm joined by my great mate, DR, and we're going to talk Game Day squad ahead of round 19, 2025 in this video. DR, very quickly, how did your Game Day squad go last week? Bit of carnage. Were you hit by it?
I was off to a bit of a flyer, but then those locks that we had last week, the Zerets, the Nick Martins, the Rosies, unfortunately, like many coaches, let me down in the end, mate. But I'm certainly not close to where you are in the leaderboard, but we do have a few weeks left, and I'm keen to make amends, and I reckon I'm going to come home strong, brother. How about yourself, mate? A pretty successful round, or did you also just cop all the carnage?
Before I get to that, very quickly, you're not much of a classic player, but I did see cheeky Pepsi Max King up in the top 3 in classic for quite a while throughout the round. Now, you did get pegged back, but let's not go there because you were still up there. You had to be up there and you were. So great work there, mate. In terms of around the grounds, absolute disaster week. Many of the players that had sort of invested a lot into in terms of putting them into multiple teams really just shattered in terms of like when we're thinking gold Nicky Martin in Contender, silver Connor Rosie, bronze Cherry, bronze Kennedy. Like it felt like all the bullets I could get, I did get. But we move on. Still ranked 8th for the season in Contender, so happy with that. And then Classic 249th for the round and started 373rd. So I don't think I've had many rounds poorer since playing properly, since starting Game Day squad this year. So we move on and we look ahead to round 19 because, as we said, there were some juicy matchups to target in round 18, but I think the matchups are a bit more evened out this round, DR. So we're going to start off, we're going to give 3 of our locks each. We're going to give 2 avoids each. We're going to give 2 pods each. And what you guys can do again, put it down in the comments for your biggest lock, your biggest pod, and your biggest avoid is. And you go with your chance to win a rare pack, a 9-player rare pack, courtesy of the great boys at Game Day Squad. Gentleman's courtesy, DR. You can go first to pick your first lock for the week.
You are a very, very good man. Now, luckily, I do own this man, not just a bronze, but I do have a silver. Wish it was a gold because I would be playing that. But it's the big boy, Brodie Grundy. This man is in unstoppable form at the moment. And his matchup this week is looking extremely juicy yet again. So it's such an easy lock for me with some other difficult matchups with particular ruckman. Max Gorn, for example, may not have it as easy this week. I think that Brodie Grundy is absolutely locked and loaded in my ruck slot, mate. How about yourself? Who's your number 1 lock for the week?
Very, very nice, mate. I'm going to go a bit different. I'm going to go with the highest averaging midfielder in Game Day squad this year. Hasn't had the best hasn't had the best month, but he roared back into form with 150. Jordan Dawson, 27 disposals, 4 marks, 8 tackles on the weekend, along with 2 goals. Perfect. Comes up against Gold Coast, who are one of the easiest matchups for midfielders, both from a statistical perspective. We saw what Josh Dacos did. Dimmer, Hardwick doesn't necessarily tag. So I think that Jordan Dawson, if you can get him in a gold variant, if you can get him in a platinum variant for your classic or gold variant for your contender teams, I think is a really, really good shout this week. So that's where I'm going with my first lock. Your second lock, mate?
I like it. I should have gone with Dawson at number 1 because I'm now thinking on the run all of a sudden because he was right underneath Brodie Grundy. But now, one of our GDS friends, partners, is going to be very, very happy to hear this as a Swans man. But it's Errol. It's Errol Goulden. The man is in fine form, finding a lot of the football. And as we know, very much matchup based. So playing North Melbourne this week, and given the fact that the Swans are a slight chance, still a slight mathematical chance to make their way into the top 8, I think that Errol Goulden is going to go absolutely nuts. Now, we saw that Phillips tagged Cozzy Pickett last week. Do they look to put a Phillips on him? I don't think that he's got the running capacity to go anywhere near Errol Goulden. I expect him to deliver some lovely left foot darts and hopefully even impact the scoreboard for us, mate. So very, very high on Errol this week.
No, I love it, mate. For my next locks, I say locks because I'm going to do a 2-for-1 package here.
Oh, okay.
In the first game of the round, Essendon versus GWS, I'm going to go with a pair of GWS defenders.
Oh, you've
And I'm going to go
taken
with
me for
Lockie
the other
Ash
one, have you?
and Lockie Whitfield. I should have
Oh,
just said a
come
pair
on,
of
Janath.
Lockies. I'm going for both of them. So Lockie Ash and Lockie Whitfield, I think they're both going to be fine players this week. Look, we don't know how much ball GWS is going to have, but with Essendon probably going to be putting out there close to a VFL side across the park, the Giants should win come pretty comprehensively. And I think that both the Lockies should get some really good disposals out back there. For the season, they're ranked 3rd and 4th by average amongst defenders. Whitfield came back into form in his 250th game, not into form, but came back off of the injury. And I think he's going to be a great play from here on to the end of the season as the Giants make a run to the finals as well. Sorry for taking that one, mate. I took one of your players at least. Who's your... That's my third lock. That's my second and third lock, let's say.
I was going to say, you could have at least given me left one of the GWS defenders for me just to swoop in with. But I did actually have, that great man there. But I'm going to go to another defender, actually. But he's a defender that has been playing as a midfielder this season, coming up against the Saints this week. Unfortunately, I don't own him in the other format, but I do have a gold card for my contender squad this week, and it's Maxi Holmes. So has been slightly underwhelming in the last couple of weeks, but I think that this is a game for him to really hit form again. Geelong, a little bit shell-shocked, potentially after the loss last week. So I think that Max Holmes is going to put his foot down on the accelerator and give us a really nice ceiling score this week against the Saints, mate. So I couldn't choose either of the GWS defenders. So I've gone down to Contender Park and going with Maxi Holmes, mate.
I like it, mate. And look, you didn't take who I would have said as my third lock, which is again in that same game, Finn Callahan. We've seen just how good he has been over a period of time now in this season. In terms of, I'll just give some base stats for him. Looking throughout the season, we've seen in his last, he hasn't sub-tonned since round 5. So his last sort of scores in Gameday squad: 106, 146, 129, 108, 114, 113, 138, 116, 120. So that does include the stretch that he was injured for a couple of weeks, but impressive play. And I think playing against Essendon, he should have a pretty good game this week as well. So there are our locks. We put 7 there. So just repeat that: Brodie Grundy, Jordan Dawson, Errol Goulden, Lockie Whitfield, Lockie Ash, Max Holmes, Finn Callahan. Now, when we say a lock, it's a play you want to have in your side, ideally in a coloured variant, but obviously in Contender, you can only have 5 goals or 10 silvers, like in that mix. So you could have 3 goals and 4 silvers. So that's a way you could get all 7 of these plays in a coloured variant out there if you've got the cards. But otherwise, having a bronze of them should also be quite sufficient as well. Let's go to our voids then, DR. Who's sort of the first player that you're thinking, okay, maybe this isn't the week to put them out there?
Janath, it hurts me. It hurts me because this is a card that I would not think about too much from week to week and just play it in my contender squad. And remember, I'm a big contender man here, not as rich as you with some of the higher formats, but it's King Nick Dacos. I'm just not feeling him this week. I'm not feeling him for some reason. Now, we know last week he was a little bit sore. There have been some unsubstantiated rumors that he left training early, and I'm not getting involved in any of that sort of stuff. I'm assuming that he's going to be fit and ready to play, albeit maybe not at 100%. But I do think that some attention may be coming his way from Corey Wagner. And I know that he matched up really well on Dacos last time. And I assume that they're going to go with the same formula there and try to make things as difficult as possible for Nicky to find the football. We know what his brother did last week, and wowee, if he had got a gold card of his brother, you would have been in fine form. But there's just something that doesn't feel right. It's a little bit of gut feel. Sometimes you've got to bring some gut feel into this stuff, Janath, and my gut is just not feeling Nick Dacos at the moment. I'm not completely sick and throwing up around the place, but something just hasn't settled there. And so he's going to be my first, and again, I hate to say it, but my first avoid for the week. How about yourself, mate? What are you thinking?
Look, I think that's a great sort of way that you went there. I'm feeling a little bit uneasy about Max Gorn. Now, Max Gorn...
You wouldn't read about it. Who avoids I get to prepare? You would not read about it, mate. Get stuff, Janath. All right, well...
So back to the drawing board for you, DR. But we haven't compared notes, by the way. In fact, I don't even have notes. I'm going off what I feel. This is pure vibes at this point, as well as some stats in there as well. So just to make sure that it is well researched here. So Max Gorn, the number one ruckman this year on average. I think that a lot of coaches would look at this matchup and say, okay, we see Mark Pittonet and Tom de Koning. And whilst we've normally seen sort of Max Gorn play quite well in sort of these kinds of matchups where they should be quite close, it probably won't translate over to game day squad as much as you would hope, because I think that Mark Pittonet will match him quite well in the hitouts, which is where Max Gorn typically gets a lot of his points. And then around the ground, you've got the double tandem of Pittonet and Tom de Koning there. So from that perspective, this is why I feel more confident in definitely putting a Brodie Grundy out there. And then probably a Rowan Marshall this week is the other one that's sort of putting his hand up as a ruckman. When we were struggling last week to find a ruckman, I think that this week it becomes a bit easy in terms of picking the two best ones, which we want to go ahead with. DR, your second avoid?
Yeah, I've just thought about this on the run, and this could be very controversial because this could come back to absolutely bite me in the bum. I won't call it round defining, but I could see it going one of two ways. And just that question mark lingering above what may happen to this man or the attention he may cop on the weekend leaves me slightly concerned. And it's the butcher, Colby McKercher. Ooh. Does he cop attention? Does he get the Jordan tag? Now, I'm looking at the North Melbourne team as a whole. There's no LDU. We're not worried about him too much. Sheasel, where does he play? Is it going to be more of that midfield, or is it going to be more of that forward type role? I think that when you're looking at North Melbourne, you can lock in that McKercher's going to continue to play down back, and he's going to be that attacking option. They're going to want the ball in his hands. I don't think we worry too much about Daniel these days, but I think they'll want to stop McKercher's run and carry. So it's a bit controversial because if he doesn't get tagged, I think he can go bananas. But if he does cop some attention, he may be one that you would like to avoid. So I don't know how I feel about that. I'm not all in on it, but there's enough question marks there for me to say maybe not this week, Colby.
That is a very controversial call. One of the sort of the bright stars that have sort of popped up as the season's gone along. Now, this. If you think you're controversial, mate, I think
where are you going? Following Colby
is now. Hear me out. Nazaya Wangani Malera. Let's discuss him.
Oh, don't.
Going down to the category, the highest averaging player in game day squad. Now, I'm not saying you fade him as in you don't have him at all in your side, but we know that the category is a hard place to play. We saw even Naz go a little bit into the midfield on the weekend as well after copping the Jordan attention. And we saw that he can impact him. Like, he is human after all. 93 is his base score with the attention. Would it be remiss to say that he could cop that same attention from a defensive forward like a Sean Manor, for instance? And then playing on the narrower ground, he won't have as much space to sort of get those 1-2s. And we know that Geelong is notoriously good at clogging up the corridor to block off some of the kicks that he can get. Now, I'm not saying you sort of fade him altogether, but perhaps instead of putting a gold out there in a contender, you might go for a silver or bronze variant. So this is a different kind of avoid where it's not like with McKercher, whether you play him or you don't play him. It's more so, do you play a lower variant off him? So that's where I'm sort of going with that. And just to supplement what you're saying, DR, in terms of McKercher, it's probably going to be Sheasel or McKercher. So if you can nail the right one who probably won't get the tag as that sort of defender, given they both have defender status, you're going to be laughing. And I reckon that could be a real point of difference play this week.
100%, mate.
Awesome. Let's move on to the pods. So I'll give it to you, mate. There's a bit of trepidation because there's one that I really want to get. but we'll see where you go. I think I've given it away. Oh, no.
I've got no idea where you're going, mate. Absolutely no idea, because I've really struggled with the pods because without ownership numbers, what is a pod? But I'm thinking that someone that wouldn't be one of your first cards that you pop on the board is Timmy Taranto, the Tarantula, this week.
Love it.
Now, coming up against West Coast, and again, really focusing heavily on matchups here. Hasn't been in terrible form, Tim Taranto. Really raided these last couple of weeks. So I think that he's the type of bloke, he's one of those older heads there now. He's the type of player that needs to step up in this match to get Richmond their second win in a row. I think he can be the man to do it. We've got players like Jack Graham that aren't available. We obviously don't rate the West Coast midfield too highly. I don't think he's going to cop any attention. And I think he's going to be doing everything he possibly can to be able to sing the song again. So, Timmy Taranto, I'm highly considering fielding this week in my Contender squad, brother. What do you reckon?
I love it. I love it. In terms of a score of 151 on the weekend against Essendon in game day squad, 34 touches, a goal, 7 marks, 5 tackles. He could replicate that against West Coast, and that's with his base card. So if you can get some form of variant on the Taranto, who we know is a stat padder. Let's call him a stat padder because he loves just racking up the stats. He could be a great play this week, mate. All right.
Beautiful, mate.
You saved my pod. Tom McCarthy. Now, I've been raving about him in Supercoach. Tommy McCarthy is my pod. So, I did get onto Colby McKirsch last week, and I reckon it could be Tom McCarthy's turn. 122, 117, 92, and 84 is his 4 scores in game day squad. Yes, he did go into the midfield against Port Adelaide, but I think there was more circumstance, the fact that we were just getting smashed in the midfield there. Now, we talk about West Coast midfield not being strong. Richmond's midfield isn't that much stronger either. And I think that, let's say the McCarthy goes back into sort of defense, he's probably going to get a decent enough score. And now this is where you need to come to the consideration. This is why it's a pod play. Because I don't think we saw Archie Roberts scored 142 last week in game day squad as a pod pick against Richmond, playing the exact same role as that sort of 7th defender or like one of the major distributors out of defense. And that was with Nick Martin injured as well, to be fair. Could we see the same from McCarthy? And this is where you got to consider, is McCarthy one of your 7 best defenders in terms of matchup? Because by name, he's probably not getting close to your 7 defenders. But with the matchup, can he push close enough? And so if it comes down to, do you go McCarthy or McKircher, who would you say right now, DR?
If you had have asked the question without that initial conversation, I would have said, what are you talking about? Colt McKircher. But when you really think deeply about it, to be honest, I would be slightly more confident in McCarthy this week. This week, we're talking. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I rate the call, brother. I rate the call. That is certainly a pod selection. Absolutely.
There we go. All right. Give me one more pod, mate.
Oh, it's tough. I don't know if he's a pod or not. But when you look at some of the big names that we've got in the midfield, and I'm talking obviously your Butters, your Bond, all these type of guys, maybe someone that just goes under the radar slightly, and again, I'm a gold card owner, is Isaac Heaney. So you can tell there's very much a Swans feel to this. Will he actually be a pod? I don't know how many teams will actually be running with him with one of their midfield slots, but again, matchup based here. It's also where Sydney are as a club. So I know I'm sort of repeating myself with the same thing that I said with Errol, but these guys need to be on top of their game. They can't afford to drop off for one game for the remainder of the season if they actually want to have some sort of an impact come September. So he's the sort of bloke that can get 30 touches, but he can also put 3 goals on the board as well. Really good for marks as well if he's playing a little bit forward of the ball. And we don't necessarily mind someone like Isaac Heaney playing forward of the ball when the opposition is North Melbourne. So he's a type of bloke that's got so many avenues to score particularly with something like Game Day Squad, where they reward your goals and those marks as well. So, again, is he going to be a pod? I'm not too sure, but I'll be without doubt playing Isaac Heaney in my midfield this week. Do you think he's going to be poddish or not? Have I missed the mark with the whole pod selection, mate?
No, not at all. And I think this is the perfect way, because what you might consider a lock is what someone else may consider a pod. And because you don't have the ownership to sort of dictate your decisions, a lot of it just comes down to you identifying the perfect matchup. And that's, I think, what the core of Game Day Squad is, and why we really enjoy it from that perspective.
Absolutely.
Mate, I'm going to round us off with 2 pods. Again, this is a play that I'm not saying is a pod. I think he's close to a lock, actually. But in your forward lines, Grindmeyers has scores of 109,
Yes.
119, 91, 130, 133, 161, 127, 112, 115 as his last 8 scores. Uber consistent. Now play St Kilda this week at GMHBA. If you don't have him, I think he's actually a lock. So he's a lock. He's a lock. We'll put him in as a lock as well. And then in terms of a pod, the pod play that I sort of want to bring to the table here, very quickly, he's just sprung out of mind. Sorry, just let me trace a bullet this very quickly. That's the one. Now, a lot of coaches may be writing this player off after what was an absolute abysmal performance on the weekend. Matt Kennedy.
Oh, yes.
Now, Matt
I knew
Kennedy,
we were going after you said that.
the reason why he's a pod, he scored 35 on the weekend. Let me tell you his scores before this. And the reason why maybe a pod, simply because of one bad score. 100, 133, 134, 152, 131, 129, 133, 125, 130, 127. Those are all of his scores dating back to round 4. He hadn't gone below 120 except for the last 2 rounds before this. Now, you may say that this is just an indication that he was going down, but even 100 in the forward line, you take 100 with the base card. And I think that it was just an anomaly game. We hadn't really seen that from Kennedy this year at all. His lowest score this year had been an 81, and this was only his second sub-ton. And I think that a lot of coaches may pod him, not antipod, may not play him this week, and this is where you can swoop in and take advantage with that and use Kennedy as a pod.
Rate that.
All right, mate.
For sure.
We are almost done. Now, 2 things very quickly. If you haven't already signed up to Game Day Squad, use our code PEANUT, PEANUT, for $20 worth of free packs. And you can gear up for Finals Fantasy, which involves all the cards from the players that are in Fantasy. So you can sign up now. You can start to build that collection. So by the time Finals come around, some of your cards may be a bit more valuable. DR, you were mentioning you could possibly slide off a Naz for a Maxi Holmes, for instance. It may not look as valuable now, but when Maxi Holmes are playing Finals and Naz isn't, that card may be a lot more valuable. The second big thing that we want to quickly mention is, if you haven't already, put down in the comments section your biggest pod, your biggest lock, your biggest avoid, and your biggest pod for this round. And very quickly, mate, we're all about transparency around here. So for the avoids, should we use a benchmark of 100 as whether our previous round scores worked or not?
I like that, mate. I like that. A nice round number.
Let's go with that. So last week, we had 7 locks. Nick Dacos, 96. So we'll give that one some thumbs down. Nick Martin, 22. I mean, that's a bit stiff because we wouldn't have known. We couldn't do anything about it. So we'll say that's a neutral one. Zach Merritt, 121, tick. Brody Grundy, 140, tick. Connor Rosé, again,
we need to give ourselves a mulligan with that one. Come on.
All right, that's 2 mulligans. Errol Goulden, 109. So not as big as we thought he'd go, but Saki Butt is definitely 150 there. So I say that we got 4 wins, 1 loss on Nick Dacos, and then 2 mulligans, because really...
That's fair. Be kind to ourselves. That's fair. You can't predict injuries here, mate.
We had 2 avoids. Now, we went 0 for 2 on them, unfortunately. Jack Sinclair scored 122, and Max Gorn scored 102. But what we will say is that we also said don't play any ruckman, which we said rucks in general, apart from Brody Grundy, And what I will say is that not a lot of ruckmen actually did anything last week. So I think we can be pretty happy with ourselves in that regard. Even a Rowan Marshall, I think, barely just cracked the 100 there. And in terms of the pods, bit disappointing here. Huey McCluggage, now this one is the mulligan. He just had a poor game in general. Was tagged by Chincotta to an
Finally
80.
gets tagged. Yeah.
Yeah. And Colby McKercher delivered 105 there. Could have been a lot bigger. Harry Sheasler ended up outscoring him in the second half, but he was looking really good. I think he's going to be a good pick in general. So what is that? We got 4 of the 7 locks. We'll call it 5 because Rosie and Martin got injured. 0 of the 2 avoids and 1 of 2 pods. So decent first week. We'll see how we go this week, mate. We'll check back in next week, and hopefully we've nailed the locks, the avoids, and the pods ahead of a massive round 19. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I just cannot wait. Looking forward to the round. And the great thing is with this game is there's so much carnage going on at the moment. But hey, here at GDS, it is all good. Just start shuffling through your players, work out who's got the best matchups, and you can replace those injured soldiers in an absolute instant, mate. So right on the contender squad this week, hoping for my aim. I think my aim's going to
Let's
be
go for a name.
a top 30 round finishing contender. I'm not going to push up to 20. I'm going to keep it realistic. Top 30 finishing contender. And I think that'll be a pretty solid aim for me this week, brother. How about yourself? What are your goals? You're currently 8th overall in contender. Where would you like to be sitting overall by the end of the round?
Mate, I reckon top 30 is definitely on the cards for you. Hopefully we can bounce back for a top 20 contender finish for the round. And
Nice.
if I can move up 1 spot, there's 6 rounds left. If I can move 1 to 2 spots up every round by the end of the season, we'll get up to first. But we'll see about that. 8th at the moment. If we can get to 7th, we take the mini wins. But it's been a pleasure, mate, as always, talking footy and game day squad with you here. Stay tuned for our sort of round summation for next round as well. But make sure, if you haven't already, put your lock, put your avoid, put your pod in the comments. And just like last week, we'll roll it out. We'll put a draw, and you guys will win a rare pack. So stay tuned. Have a good week. Good luck for this week, and we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.
You guys.